Now they made claim on the hatched eggs through the birth certificates, being bank bonds to back the United States corporation, private foreigners' debt. This is called conversion again. And that has been going on a consistent basis around the country. And this, and while it may seem odd to you or unrelated, this has much to do with them bombing cities around the country where Asiatics were making progress, just like in Tulsa. You know, which they will tag falsely in history as Black Wall Street, if you get the point. Because their mission is to steal the estates and then have the people forget that they're colonists and that they're exercising unum sanctum policy. So they pay the Black leaders from the college that they set up to start talking about racism and colors and jobs. And that's their missionary work. And then, you know, these people are hanging on the rope, and their job is to say, they open the Bible and say, everything's all right, you're in a better place, keep hope alive, stuff like that. While you're choking on the rope. And then they get a piece of the spoils in the background while shouting Jesus and Allah and stuff like that. And the people don't suspect that these people are tied to Rome. And these are the operations that have been taking place in North America for quite some generations, which is again why some people who get wind of us teaching you this real history and law get upset with us. Because what happens is when you expose Rome, it also exposes their minions. Right? And when you start becoming cognate of what's up and you all start setting up trust and stuff like that, even though you're not totally competent, and you start setting up trust and stuff like that, what it does, it interrupts their capacity to transfer the seeders' trust that are actually operative in New York on Wall Street. Are we clear?
Clear.
And this is again why we encourage you all to do that. And again, this is again why we're doing the specificity of definitions, because we would that when we ask you certain questions, that at least 2/3 of the people raise their hand.
All right.
At least.
All right.
You know, we know that we're making inroads. We know that your heart is there. So it's not a critique to the negative. It is an appeal to you to have some cognizance as to how much trouble you're really in. You know, the people really don't know how much trouble they're in. And I think a lot of times, because we present this information on a casual platform, that people underestimate it. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? They underestimate its importance. And it's important for you to exercise this knowledge because that's what's going to save you. Are we clear? You're not being saved in the netherworld. Right here, the kingdom is on earth, ain't on the clouds. So let's get over that dynamics. Are we clear?
Clear.
Now, give Brother Troy the mic, because I know he was trying to share something with Chris. No, we're going to get you in that picture. Now, Black's Law Dictionary, or you can go, I want you to go into also in your basic dictionary, I want you to deal with movement. Movement. Now, Sister Dick. Huh? I know you. She's right in the midst of it. You know she upset with me. She's right here like, don't pick on me.
Movement.
It's a noun.
Yes.
Act or process of moving, a particular manner of moving, chiefly plural in action or activity, as of a person or a body, or persons. Military, naval, change of position or location of troops or ships. 5, rapid progress or events, or abundance of events or incidents. The progress of events, as in narrative or drama. The suggestion of action, as in pertaining or the like. A series of action or activities directed or tending toward a particular end. An anti-slavery movement. The course of tendency or trend of affairs in a particular field. The price change in the market of some commodity or security. An evacuation of the bowels. A material evacuated. The works or a distinct portion of the works of a mechanism as a watch. Music, a principal division, a section of a sonata, a symphony, or the like. Motion, rhythm, time, tempo, and rhythmical structure of character. It says to motion. I'm reading from the American College Dictionary.
Let me ask you this question and do an analysis. Remember the conversation we were having the other day, G, relative to the prophet said for us to make changes?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right, and also the Moorish divine and national movement of the world. And also people who do not understand what movement means, which does not mean static or standing still or non-change. Movement is designed in an action of social engineering to change a condition of a people or to counter something that is present at point. To remove from one point to another, whether state of mind, state of being, state of cognizance, state of condition. Moorish divine and national movement is designed not to stay the same, but to progress. In the order of countering connotative slavery, which is a mental condition due to someone on an outside force under de facto means controlling the narrative. Therefore, as a countermeasure, one of the specificities that the Prophet Noble commanded all Moors to do is to produce literature as a countermeasure, and in order that it have a quality and a stability and in line with customs of truth. He said, go back to that state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers. And of course, when you do that, you will start finding out the misprision, other modifications that took place that are both untoward, untrue, and not in harmony with the principles upon which the movement was founded. Therefore, if one is to take the approach of carrying out the instructions in the divine warning by the prophet for the nation, one would look at specificity of definitions in order to guide yourself in a changing world.
Islam.
Are we clear? And you would understand that as it's presented on one surface, it is not its conclusory intent. Therefore, you would comprehend the Old Canaanite Temple, restoration of the estate, reintroduction to the culture and traditions, Moorish Temple of Science, also called Moorish Holy Temple of Science, civic organization teaching government, etc., interchanging with Marcus Garvey was teaching government structure, etc. Then the countermeasure that was made by the Europeans on an infiltration basis to neutralize the progress of the movement, and he adopted a religious affidavit in 1928 as a countermeasure to what the Europeans did, and with other persons among our own who were doing things to undermine the movement, to protect the movement. He used Herod's law, we're talking structured government, and so he reminded the Moors so that they would not be confused with the action, knowing that many of them, except for the Arabs, chiefs, etc., and some of the people who were scholars, did not know that Islam means law, order, and governmental principles. So he's dealing with specificity of definitions of purpose. Are we clear?
Clear.
Now, people who don't understand that would look at people who would exercise the action on the comprehension of the word as being in opposition to those who take a passive or static position on the word and try to remain in 19 and 13, in 19 and 20. And think that they're carrying out the movement. What they have done is violated the movement.
Because it's
As a countermeasure, and for cognitive purposes, the Prophet Obedrali even wrote an article in the newspaper, which is one of our most important instruments, which he commanded to be preserved, for us to make changes. And he also reminded us that the movement and his philosophy is based on a Rotarian principle, which means universal. And so the movement and the philosophy is universal. And so you would use that as a what? A reference point or a cornerstone to measure your actions. And the constitutional principle upon which it is founded, you would always use that as a guide and a maxim. Are we clear?
Clear.
Now, recognizing that you're dealing with the world's largest estate, logically those who benefit from the theft of the birthright, the parasites. So a parasite in biology lives off the virtues of its host. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right.
So an exploiter or a colonist in politics lives off the virtue of its host. Therefore, in order to deceive the platform, they must present a false paradigm and yet at the same time control the narrative. Are we clear?
Clear.
So what do we recognize when we go back to the state of mind of our ancient mothers and fathers? We find the allodial principles of Muslim law, upon which the Constitution is founded. And then we see the feudal law operations that are taking place today. And then we'll make reference points to see where an interjection was made to contaminate the platform.
Yeah.
Then you discover the Act of Congress, 1871. Are we clear? Then for those who, because the Congress keeps records in the journals of the House, all right? So then you start seeing the Trading with the Enemy Act, the War Act, the Negro Act, etc., right? And you start recognizing that the different legislation that was taking place since 1861 are all in relationship to enforcing and administering a smooth platform for feudal law operations. It is important for those who are exercising de facto powers to also deal with measures by which the people would be pleased with or accepting of this imposter platform, with imposter persons claiming sovereign authority activity. Are we clear?
Clear.
That, in fact, is what took place and what is taking place now. All right? So, what is the other problem that we have? People who do not use critical thinking, and that is many, are not aware of what is in operation because they're not aware that you have a de facto platform operating against you in the name of government. Are we clear?
Islam.
Any instrument that comes from the desks of any of their operatives is feudal in character. They will not produce an allodial instrument. Are we clear? Knowingly and by operative directive. So what you have is a secret oligarchy, only secret to the people who can't read, or the people who don't know the real politics. Not a secret to scholars, not a secret to politicians around the world. Definitely not secret to the priesthood, because they're at the background, they're the shadow, and the least suspected. Are we clear? But the masses at large are not cognizant of it. And with the miseries or the injuries that they suffer every day, by not knowing what they're dealing with, they have no competent action administered among themselves for remedy, or as a counter, or as a rebuttal to an actual attack that's inculcated and entrenched. And usually, if approaching it, they would usually start arguing an improper subject matter in relationship to what's going on, and therefore be declared incompetent. And therefore, by force of law, or by action of law, operation of law, abandon the estate that they don't know is what they're arguing, because they're arguing attitude. When you analyze these operations, particularly between 25 and 28, and then you look at the authority on the back of the questionnaire and look at the timing, etc., you understand the countermeasure Drew Ali had to make in his force to make changes. Are we clear?
Clear.
Now, because the people themselves, most of them, and I would assume this, because I wasn't there, not unlike when we told people to raise their hands here, it was probably the same thing there, and maybe even less. You had a bunch, thousands of people that didn't know anything about trust law, anything about estate, very little about birthright. They hear it, or nationality, or national principles. And we're usually approaching the Moorish divine national movement from a perspective of a belief distinguished from an estate issue. Are we clear? Not knowing the difference between religion and divine law. So what I ask you to do is read us in the dictionary, in your own English dictionary, divine.
Divine.
Divine. Stay in your mic. Voila.
Adjective. Of or pertaining to a god, especially the supreme being. Addressed or appropriated to God, religious sacred. Proceeding from God, godlike characteristics of or befitting a deity. Heavenly, celestial, being a god, befitting a deity, pertaining to divinity or theology, of superhuman or surpassing excellence. One versed in divinity, a theologian, a priest or clergyman, to discover or declare something obscure or future, as by supernatural means, prophecy, to perceive by intuition or insight, conjecture. And it means
Intuition, insight, conjecture. Go ahead.
to archaic, to pretend,
So now we're going archaic, that means the ancient. Go ahead.
to use or practice divination, prophecy, to have perception by intuition or insight, conjecture, and it says Middle English, Latin, divinus, and
So what you see, divination is really dealing with cosmology, astrology. Mathematical calculation on studying of the stars and the workings of nature. That is related to its denotation in your first instances, or the first definitions that were presented, are actually presentments under a connotative presentment, and not the original meaning. You must be able to do that and recognize that. This is why we're dealing with specificity of definitions. How many people would not recognize that? They would take the first entries that are presented as the absolute truth. However, that's connotative. That's not what it really originally means. Are we clear?
Clear.
Now, what they would do for controlling the narrative, that means controlling the mind with education, they would take the denotation and push it down to the bottom, and then introduce the connotative presentments at the top. And that's what the people take as their educational basis. And then whoever set that up now controls the minds who adopt the connotation, while the priesthood themselves remain with the archaic, because that's the foundation. Are we clear?
Clear.
This is the key on how they miseducate people, and this is the key on how they maintain their power over the people. Now I want to remind you this. This is why all Privy Council orders have antechambers. And antechambers, they make sure they don't violate that rule. Are we clear?
Clear.
So they know that the narrative controllers do what's called flipping. They turn everything upside down. So if you want to know what something means, start from the bottom and read up. So I wanted to show you that, to show you and to express to you why we're doing specificity of definitions. Because we want you to be more effective. All right? Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that with that same concept, which is why we go to the oldest dictionaries we can find. The etymon, the etymology, which is the denotative meaning
Yes.
of the word, the entries are going to be closer to the etymology, the older the dictionary.
Yes.
So
Yes.
the newer dictionaries, the true denotative
Are
meaning
watered
words
out.
are way going to be usually lower.
Are watered out.
That's right.
Are watered out. Now, is that collagen?
Yeah.
Now, look at God. Now, how many of you know what this is called? How many of you know what this is called? Let me see. Raise your hands. Raise your hands. Raise your hands. Ain't enough, but it's better than it was before.
Wipe the sweat from your brow.
All right, this side of the room, what's it called? Oh, big trash. Definitely challenging. How do you even know this? Yeah, I know what it is. Well, what is it? Can we hear that again? I didn't know what they said. All right, what is it, y'all?
Swastika.
Swastika.
What is it also called?
The good being.
The good being. That's where you get the commonly used phrase, the supreme being. For it is the symbol of the workings of nature. Generation of life. Your four gates is also referenced as Yahweh. YHWH. Earth, air,
Fire, water.
fire, water. The elements of building. Counterclockwise, it is the rotational point of the zodiac field. Are we clear?
Clear.
So, for the priesthood, the study of that circle, the rotation at that point, right? Y'all got that? I want you to pay attention to this. You got that? I'm going to do this a little larger because I really want you to pay attention to this. It's very important. This is purpose for you because we want to empower you. But we want you to think beyond this moment because we don't have the time to refine everything. Are we clear? So, swastika means the good being. Very often in the archaic world, all over the planet, you all, when a mother chose a son for a mate, who she wanted for a mate, they would ritualistically use henna and paint this in the palm of her hand.
Islam.
And she would dance and go and pick a son. And usually they would dance in circles, and when she chose a mate, she would raise her leg and go like that, and that's what the mate is. Then, before they were chosen, it would also be swiping. It would also be known, the charting, everyone. It's already known by the griots.
Islam.
Are we clear?
Clear.
Because that's part of the culture. Are we clear?
Clear.
So the harmonies would already be predetermined, that part of it.
Yeah.
And usually they do a ritual for 3 days. They go through the ritual for 3 days. And then the sons would dress up all beautiful and stuff, whatever, to try to impress them. You know, like birds do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is aside from the issue of the mothers and the fathers that you have to go through. All right?
Yep.
Now, that's called the good being, and the priesthood hides the fact that it's cosmology and that they study the science. Excuse my circle, all right? Kind of,
Oh boy.
this guy can't draw, man. But anyway. And you're dealing with the aggregate, or what you call the lower chambers of the earth. Right? The physical. All right? And so they lower the bottom pole. All right? You got that? Huh?
Islam.
And it's the German tribes studying the culture. Are we clear? Are we clear?
Clear.
And the German word for the great circle is, that's the name of that symbol,
Islam.
Amen Ra.
which means the great circle of the zodiac.
Yes.
Are we clear?
Clear.
And this would be cathode, this we get Catholic from. Cathode is also, because everything is energy and electricity,
Yes.
and magnetism and electricity are harmonics in engineering. So that would be the south. That'd be the north node, right? It's actually over here. It's called when you're looking into the universe.
Yes.
Now, when we're coming in from the outside, it's reversed. And this is where the priesthood would calculate the deacons and the cardinal points, and they would give the news.
Islam.
That's how you get the news. Go ahead. And so the priesthood would always be the reporters, all right? But they would do it by following the stars, and so they would be called Sayaraha, or the wise men follow the stars. They would be the chart of the stars. And also, this would be the basis upon which the houses of the constellations are charted. I'll get with you. So when you deal with these are called cardinal points. Also called noble points. Cardinal points right? And this is where you get cardinal in the church. All of your angels, these are divided into 3 of 3. So each one of these are 10 degrees in here too.
Islam.
Are we clear?
Clear.
This is 45 degrees, which is 9, and this is 90 degrees out here. So your 90 degrees out here comprises 360 degrees, full circle, or 100% for Alpha and Omega. Now, when you're dealing with what is called the mundane cross, is also called the Coptic cross. So it's dealing with the science of Earth, or Earth science. So in geometry and in engineering, in single line, this would be the glyph for the Earth. Are we clear?
Clear.
In metaphysics, when you're studying the science of the universe, cosmology, etc., astrology, and the combination of the divination and determinations and interpretations of the energies, it would be the same as that, but would have the 3 3s in each corner. Excuse my scribbling. In that form, it would be called the master seal. It would be called the master seal. All right? In the aggregate world, when you're dealing with, polarization, duality, laws of nature, all right, you would have this would be aggregate, right? So this would be in its aggregate form. When you're capable of activating the knowledge of this, then you get into the aggregate and the abstract, right?
Islam.
And then your poles will become abstracts. And your three gates, or your three houses in the mansion at the four corners, the 3 and the 4, or 3 plus 4 equals what?
7.
So the knowledge of that in the logos degree will be circle 7.
Islam.
But it's all the same thing.
Islam.
But there's different degrees.
Islam.
Now, the issue is for you to understand what you're looking at, and for you to become competent in operations of this. This is what Hassan is dealing with the workshop tomorrow. Those of you who come to the workshop, he'll be refining a lot of the culture. And understand this is earth culture. This is the culture of the planet. It's not alien. You know, like one of the things I recognize too when you get into the science is that people think that this Moorish science that the rabbis don't deal with this, and that the imams don't deal with this. They all deal with this in secret.
Yes.
But in public, they will just do different things like this in a ritual. Like say in Islam, in the creed, not science, they would go 7 times counterclockwise around the cube, or Kaaba,
Islam.
which means the cube.
Islam.
That's called circumambulation. In the book of Revelation, it would say, I heard one speak with a voice of many waters, and they were standing on 7 golden candlesticks. There's your 7. All right? Now, the gold is symbolic of the alchemical metal of the sun and its transits, and it's ecliptic. Is that not correct?
Islam.
Now, the deal is, when the priesthood is telling the truth about the books, they would make sure that the people knew this. But instead, they keep it for themselves. It's the source of their power. And the people are always kept in mystery. Are we clear?
Clear.
And this is also why, in this particular solar system, that the 7 is so important, the number 7. Because it's the root of earth culture. Go ahead.
Islam, Brother Taj, you had mentioned north, east, west, and south as the views, and we had mentioned the cardinal points. I just wanted to add to your wisdom that the 4 cardinals, when the first letters of each of the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, are arranged, it's the first 4 letters in the word calculation.
Of course.
Islam.
Because that's what it is, calculation. That's what calculus is.
Islam.
And then when you're dealing with the angles and the radii, it's called spiritual geometry.
Islam.
So when you look at, say, the ancient universities, which we call mosques, they were originally universities, right? You'll see all of the structures are compound spiritual geometry.
Yeah.
Everything is expressed in spiritual geometry.
Mm-hmm.
Very elaborate.
Very.
Very elaborate. You know, however, on the surface, with most people that go to these different institutions, they're not taught that. They're just taught the rituals of making Hajj, you know, and I'm not knocking, you know, right. But as far as the real science of life, except in certain areas, most of them don't get it either. You know, we learn to perfect imagery without the knowledge, if you get the point. You know, rituals without the knowledge.
Islam.
Even when, say, Ramadan, dealing with the movement of the moon. But its origin and its purpose is understanding body and cleansing the body. So you give a ritual to teach undisciplined people how to take care of their body. If you really understood how things work, that's right for everybody. It's not a belief system. It's a science for health.
Islam.
Same thing with ablution.
Yes.
You know, but then even with the element of water, it's retention of memory.
Yes.
You know, it's health purposes and etc. But I want to present that to you, to also present to you that even when you're dealing with the angels or the angles, when you deal with the angles that would be enumerated around the wheel, these are called deaconess. And this is where you get deacon in the church. While them priests would tell the people, don't you be looking at that astrology stuff, it's the devil, Illuminati, people will only say what is in the dark corner. Well, they spook people up, and so people don't study. And so they control the narrative. Meanwhile, all of them, in fact, know the science. And then for controlling the masses, they agree to give the science in anthropomorphic formats in different platforms, which is called secularism. And when you trace it, if you're a scholar, you can trace it all back to one origin. Misrepresented to the masses, if you get the point. So again, when you deal with specificity of definitions, you can find this stuff on your own. Are we clear?
Clear.
Now, because of let's keep it blunt, because they're cheap as hell, even though they're robbing people, they won't put the finance in the architecture like they used to. You know, but if you deal with the architecture of churches, mosques, and synagogues, they're all based on astrology.
Yes.
The architecture is based on astrology. They deal with 3, 5, 7s, 12s, 13s. All clear?
Clear.
The cinque-foil window, it's called cinque-foil because it's usually would have 5 panels, 5 lights. And it usually would be metered from the floor, and it would shine down on the uterus, which they would call a pulpit system now. Pulpit. And as the sun moves or transits in the sky, it would send a light across the uterus, which is the pulpit. And the pews on both sides are really the fallopian tubes and the eggs. And the birth canal is the aisle. And the 2 pillars at the door is the 2 legs. And it'll sometimes paint the doors red, representing blood. And then they'll have the pyramid or the pedestal at the top, at the front entry, representing the penis. And that's based on the structure of the body and operations of nature. All right, so the church or the circle or the operations of the zodiac wheel is to be applied in preparing families. So the knowledge of it, in harmony with the workings of the womb, is how you build the Temple of Solomon, which is these physical temples. And the Temple of Solomon that you see in South America and also in Hikupta, because we always do things in doubles. So what you see on one side, you'll find on the other side of the planet, based on metrology. All right, so all cities are laid out by metrology, so write that down. Charting the stars. And I really didn't want to get into this too much because Hassan's going to hook y'all up like tightly tomorrow. But make sure everybody Do your thing for tomorrow. Yeah. And again, you know, like the other thing that we were talking about earlier, when people are talking about more science, you'll find that a lot of people that come into the Moorish Divine and National Movement are not really taught the science. They are taught to confess that statement. Upon a test, most of them don't have science whatsoever. Which is again why it's difficult for sometimes they think that we're against them for teaching the science and they're claiming to have the science and most of them don't even get it. You know, the adults keep it to themselves for selfish cause, selfish reason. They don't really want the people to develop. Because most of the people, if they really understood Moorish culture, is predicated on merit. And most of the people in this particular corrupted culture are in positions based on politics and chaos, not on qualifications. And so because of envy, greed, pettiness, and jealousy, they hold the people back. Because most of the people that really have the spirit for truth, if you tell them the truth, they will grow exponentially. Just the way you churn milk and butter just rise to the top. So you don't make a judgment, start churning milk. You understand? Butter rise to the top. So when you're dealing with the merit of beings, people would be assigned to their missionary work based on their qualifications. And how do you do it? You read a chart. How do mothers prepare civilization? They read the chart, their womb, that Ankh, and the moon, and the transits, and the energies, and the foodstuffs that are around them, and plan life accordingly. It's called applied science of number 9. Now understand this, that the Europeans use your science, which is why they're ruling you. To keep you from it, they always call it devil stuff. Are we clear?
Clear.
So that you don't examine it. And so they're ruling you with more science while publicly denying more science. Are we clear?
Clear.
On a political level, this is why you see all of the so-called founding fathers had Korans. But I guarantee you they didn't use them the way the believers do. And they got Torahs too. And they got Vedas too. Are we clear?
Clear.
But when they come out to the believers, they only have one book. See, it's the only sandwich you're supposed to eat. Bite is not those other sandwiches and stuff. These guys got it going on. They be having $3,000 suits. It's a nice suit. Damn, $3,000? Because they could. That's right. And they do it with the widow's pennies. This is where Yeshua was disputing with the priesthood. So the priesthood hide all this by saying, look at the devil. He got the Gucci bag. And everybody said, yes, go kick the devil's ass. And the priest, he was really doing all the stuff. All clear?
Clear.
So this is why we're talking about specificity of definitions. And what I recognize too, and this is very important, so look at this. So when you're looking up a word, right? It's part of speech. First rule, right? It's etymon. That's the brackets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Middle English, whether Sanskrit. Very often they will not take you from the Germanic roots into Sanskrit or into, go ahead, interject.
When Brother Troy was reading movement, and I'm glad you brought up the Sanskrit, just very briefly, and then I yield the floor. Movement. It says, movement comes from the Proto-Indo-European root, meua. And meua is by the Sanskrit kamamuta, which denotes, and I quote, moved by love, end quote.
So the first rule of the 5 principles, and the cure is what? There you go. And so it is symbolized by what? By Venus, isn't it?
Islam.
Right? Right?
Right.
Yes.
And with the operations of what? Family planning?
Family planning.
Then you got the crescent right here. And that becomes the egg in the universe.
Islam.
It's cosmos.
Yes.
That's earth science,
Yes. Mother and son.
isn't it?
Yes.
And that's the truth of all religions.
Islam.
It has nothing to do with, what they say, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Zoroaster, doesn't matter.
Correct.
It's all just the workings of nature. Now, so what is the priest's job? To make them think this only applies to Islam. Right? That way he could divide the people against themselves and use them against each other, have them war with each other, and he comes, takes the spoils, and then say the devil did it. And that's how it's actually been working. Actually, that's what's been going on.
Islam.
You know, and people never suspect the priesthood. And so, again, that's why I shared this with you. Yeah. So you do what you can to fix them all, right?
Islam.
Islam. All right. Now, another word that I wanted you to look at is after you looked up wardship tenders, I wanted you to look up minor and minority in Black's Law Dictionary. Give us the part. You can also look it up in your standard dictionary too, because I want you to give us the part of speech. And I want you to give us the NY. Go ahead, Troy. Give him the mic. You addressed already, right? You addressed it. You were finished addressing the issue that you was questioning. Go ahead.
What issue I was questioning?
No, did you finish?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Was there something else that you was gonna say earlier? All right, pass it to Brother Troy. Now I want you to pay attention to this and put this in harmony with wardship tenders and military. So if you comprehend actually what we're leading to, is that the people are being governed under wardship, and they need to be made aware of it if they are not. Clear. So that we can start addressing what's actually happening, as opposed to what people assume connotatively has been happening. Are we clear?
Clear.
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead, brother.
Minor, an infant or person who is under the age of legal competence. One under 21, a term derived from the civil law, which described a person under a certain age as less than so many years. And then minor is case law. Also less or less consideration.
Less or
Lower.
less consideration.
Lower person of inferior condition than the case law.
Now, read that last part again.
Also less, this is minor,
All right, yes.
Black's Law, 4th edition. Also less, of less consideration, lower, a person of inferior condition.
So our people think it means numerical count of Afrocentricity, and it actually is a caste system. So what occurs when people who can't read and they agree to be minority, because the Negro leader guys call them that, and they think it means Afrocentricity. They have agreed to a classification to the negation of their circumstance, and then they want to march and pray because they agreed to be lesser and think it's an identity just because they can't read.
Outside of the human family.
Are they responsible in law to know self? So isn't a knowledge of self primal in culture and civilization? Therefore, ignorance of the law is no excuse, is it?
That's right.
So therefore, these people don't know I, self, law, and master, and they're looking to follow some other man, and he screws them. Should they be pissed?
No.
Now, they call this foreign European white man, and then he exercises that power. Should they be mad?
No.
Because it means sovereign. So Black's Law Dictionary, give us 3 white persons. That's right. Now this is specificity of definitions.
3 white persons. Referred to in the Naturalization Act
Now
as
stop right there, because we must be clear, because we want you to cross-reference and do research. The Naturalization Act of what? Of when?
1870.
Naturalization Act was the year.
July 14th, 1870.
So 1870, what happened with the Naturalization Act, 1870? And what modifications were made in relationship to the Naturalization Act? How many people are aware? If you are, raise your hand. All right, tell us what occurred. Give him the mic. He's gonna give it back to you. Give him the mic.
The addition of the European as the free white person in today's
We're
society.
talking about the date in relationship to the natural. You're on path, but that's not really what the question is. Was someone who modified the Naturalization Act? Who was it?
Horace Greeley.
Ulysses S. Grant.
Oh, you listen.
Modified it from what? The Naturalization Act of what? 1790. Modified 1870. Now, with that modification, and then the actions with Horace Greeley and the Whittemore Party, this is when, as you expressed now come to where you are now. So what occurred, and the motive of them modifying the Naturalization Act had much to do with the Europeans taking on the custom and the noble title of white person. They did not apply to him. But go ahead.
So Horace Greeley and the Whittemore Party,
Go ahead.
the Whittemore Party, where the Europeans had classed themselves under the legal status of white, adding to the addition of the other nations.
What political platform was set up? The Republican
The
Party.
Republican Party.
Horace Greeley set up the Republican Party, and it was suggested that the European members of the Whittemore Party, after the split, take on the noble titles, white people. And so 1854, right, that's actually earlier. And so it became necessary for them to modify because they were actually foreigners. So they want to claim the sovereign power of the nobles and sovereignty of the land. So by political motive, the European sons and daughters took on the title white people, which is a nobility title of the people of the land, i.e. the Moors. And so they modified the Naturalization Act, Ulysses S. Grant, when he took over the seat of the praetor. All right, so we want to put that in perspective. So people need to understand specificity of definition, because you know by the training of the Negroites, that's the Negro leader guys trained by the Europeans, they taught our people that white people was an identity and that black people was an identity while they themselves know it isn't, and get a payoff in the back to keep that paradigm going to the injury of the heirs of the estate, who now can't read. All right, go ahead.
Free white persons referred to the Naturalization Act as amended by the Act July 14, 1870, has meaning naturally given to it when first used in the First Statute 103C3, meaning all persons belonging to the European races then commonly counted as white, and their descendants, including such descendants in other countries to which they have immigrated. It includes all European Jews, more or less intermixed with people of Celtic.
That'd be Celtic. That would be with a C. That C is actually a K sound.
Celtic, peoples of Celtic, Scandinavian, Teutonic, Iberian, Latin, Greek, and Slavic descent. It includes Magyars, Lapps, and Finns, and the Baskets, and Albanians,
Basques.
Basques, and Albanians. It includes the mixed Latin, Celtic, Iberian, and Moorish inhabitants of Spain and Portugal, the mixed Greeks, Latin Phoenicians, the North African inhabitants of Sicily, and the mixed Slav and Tatar inhabitants of South Russia. It does not mean Caucasian race.
Repeat.
It does not mean Caucasian race.
Repeat.
It does not mean Caucasian race,
Go ahead.
Aryan race, or Indo-European race, nor the mixed Indo-European, Dravidian, Semitic, and Mongolian peoples who inhabit Persia. Assyrian or Asiatic birth and descent will not be entitled to become a naturalized citizen of the United States as being a free white person.
All right. Now, so what occurs with many of our people who are under the mind control narrative do not understand when other Africans and people come to North America and their passports say white people, and then our people here get upset and start accusing them of taking advantage of them because they think they're white type thing, because they are.
They don't understand that it's a status.
It's a status. So now we're dealing with specificity of definition, aren't we? So what occurs when the Europeans, through the corporate states, keep stealing our people's estates and gentrifying our communities? And then they start marching around talking about Black Power. What have they just done? Relinquish their estate.
And giving them power.
And it appears innocent, doesn't it? On the surface, doesn't it? So what does a person who is cheating take it as? They take what you say as what it is. Now, why do you mean it that way? Ebonically, it really means spiritual. Huh? It means exactly what the damn you said. Huh?
What you say matters in the equivocal language.
Then we keep losing, then we want to march all over the place. But we claim to be spiritual. You see the problem that we have? Again, and this and many other problems is why we're dealing with specificity of definitions. And it's so important because our people's concepts are totally incorrect in general, because they have adopted the connotative linguistics and the connotation presentments superior to the etymons and denotations, which are pushed to the bottom. Therefore, it is incumbent upon us, those who know, to remind our children that they're flipping and that they're emphasizing the connotative presentments as the primal definitions, which is why they do the linear entries 1, 2, 3, 4, and they'll take the connotations and invert them and place them at the top. And so the first thing they see makes the first impression. And most people, if they're trained to be lazy, they won't go down to the etymon, and then by the etymon, you separate the wheat from the chaff.
Islam.
Because the etymon tells you what the definitions are, and clearly, once you see that, all the other stuff is interesting, but you toss it. That's how you separate the wheat from the chaff in language. And that's how you understand, first there was the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the power of the Word is the etymon. That's third grade grammar, third grade grammatication. However, you know and I know that our people don't get it in high school, for the most part, you know. And one of the things that the European does to protect the platform of the hegemony is by, and this is why they would have segregated schools, because schools where they would have targeted children, they would not teach these fundamental principles. And as you already understand, we haven't really gone into this really deep. We just, touched on some things. But we want you to use your broader thinking, your critical thinking, and take it further. And understand we've given you what you call cornerstone information. And you take that cornerstone information and then you blend it out. But understand these are Rotarian, and so these principles actually apply in all disciplines of education.
Islam.
In logistics,
Yes.
etc. Don't look at these things as separate. These things apply in all areas of knowledge and science. All clear?
Clear.
And they'll tell you essentially that astrology is at the base of all your world sciences. So now you know what a priest will tell you, don't go into that astrology stuff. Why? Because that's the foundation. Give him the foundation, then he's out of a job.
Absolutely.
So he won't be job no more, he'll be Job, take all the shit. But he'll be taking all your stuff. In the name of, not in the Lord's, well, in the name of the Lords of London. But you know what I mean? And so they'll be getting over on that. So is there any other questions that we might have of use to you in relationship to specificity of definitions and why we have this as a subject matter? And yet you see it's tied to all the other things that we do. We want to show you that it's relative. Everything is relative. But again, we really need you to honestly take seriously when we keep telling you that for the most part our people can't read. They don't need to necessarily be able to read, and I'm not knocking that. They need to know how to read. Are we clear?
Clear.
If you pay attention to the parts of speech, the brackets, the etymology, stop forgetting the rule. In other words, like some air conditioners there,
Islam.
I do some electric downstairs. And one of the things I recognized that one was wired different from that one. I put a tester on it, and they had, I noticed that they had the ground line hooked up as if that was like a 220. But yet they're matched air conditioners, and they're 115s. You understand what I'm saying? But I noticed when I was in the box fixing some things, including when I was fixing some of these outlets. Right? So I fixed it, but at the same time, the same way that you would pay attention to the energy output
Yes.
in electricity is the same way you would pay attention to the morphology of words and the energy output.
Islam.
Because the point that we're making to you is simply this, and this is one of the demonstrations we wanted to do earlier, but I didn't get a chance to go out and do what I pleased to do earlier. What I was going to do was take some canisters, some plastic canisters, and I was going to print out definitions and put them in the canister, but not list the word in the definition, but put the word beneath it. And then have people read the definitions and then say what the word is. And that would show you that our concepts are incorrect, because most people would not recognize the word. But yet they use these words and assume them to have meanings that don't apply to what the definitions are. And so therefore it is easy for Europeans to come in our communities and sell people dead pledges. And these people think they own something. Dead pledge, that's a definition, right? The word goes to it as mortgage. Right? So contract is dead and their body is the pledge. And they happily sign it. And on the end they lose. That ain't the devil's fault, is it? They can't read. Right? Alright, now again, when we tell people, when we give them the House Joint Resolution 192 as a research prerequisite, right? and they look at that, and they look at the points of reference in House Joint Resolution 192, and they'll notice that in 19 and 13, Woodrow Wilson converted all allodial titles into mortgages and deeds. It's clear in the congressional records how many people took that serious, and how many people, in the name of helping their people in these organizations, point that out to the people. Except with withdrawal aid. They're living off your virtues. Of course, that Constitution, go back to that state of mind of your mothers, ancient mothers and fathers. 1913, he set up the old Canaanite temple. What occurred when you start going, looking at the microfilm, etc.? So if Woodrow Wilson converted all of allodial titles to mortgages and deeds, you know that that was a political act with not necessarily good intentions for some people. Are we clear?
Clear.
But if you don't pay attention to details, it's just a piece of information and you act like you just read it and you move on. And so most of these people at North America, particularly people in our communities, and when you test them, don't know what an allodial title is, never even heard of it. But they can tell you about, my grandma and my grandpa and my Uncle Rube and stuff, they own 158 acres of land out there in Pensacola, New Jersey. And we ain't got nothing now. And my aunt saying in North Carolina, they had 200 acres of land, now we renting. And Fred, their grandma, they had all kinds of land down there in Florida. Now they ain't got nothing. They working at McDonald's trying to rent. Don't even know that their inheritance was cheated. It's cheated. They don't even look at that lost land as their inheritance. It doesn't even dawn on them that they've been cheated out of an inheritance. And you bring it up and they think, oh, that's that Moorish science stuff. They do. They really do. And so again, this can, as you can see, this can go in many directions because it covers everything. It really, really actually does. But we would like, really what I seek to do and see is that we be effectively countering European colonial operations at North America, and it shows a manifest, a real manifest, But I know we're doing it in certain areas, but that's what I seek to do, And I trust that when you come here to the House of Reawakening Minds, that you seek to do just that. When you go to the Moorish Science Temple of America, as an institution, it was put in place to do just that. And I hope that you use all the knowledge that you gain to make life better for yourselves and better for your children, better for the generations that come after you. So again, as a tool, as a useful tool, specificity of definition is paying attention to the denotation distinguished from connotation. Are we clear? All right? Any other questions? Thank you for coming out to the House of Reawakening Minds. Thank you, Dr. Naila, hiding in the winds. Thank you, Abundant God, for bringing us greens and stuff. She always hooks us up. What we want to do, how many of you, Hassan, can you come up? Come up, please. Thank you, Abundance. I hope it's abundantly good as usual.
As usual.
Hey, I can see where they biting them sandwiches. Y'all starting to upset me.
As
Hold on, I'll be right into it, right? They be up there like, they don't even wipe their mouth.
He said, let me hold my proposal.
I'm gonna get the word, man. Going all out the side. I'll be over here trying to pay attention on this.
Let me focus on the focus.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Islam.
Islam.
So tomorrow we're having an astrology 101 workshop from between 1 and 5. We're going to go over all the basics. So for those of you that have ever done like a astrology session with me, like a mirror session, I'm going to go over the same thing, just a little more. One of the things that we're releasing tomorrow to the family is a 4 or 5 part, actually. It's 5 part with the music too. But it's interactive literature, and one of them is the astrology, astro org cubes. I've written a basic common law copyright as it was, instructed to me in doing research. I completed it. But I figured that we could have a flashcard, so to speak, out of paper, which you can actually flatten and also construct that into a cube to go in with what Brother Taj was going over with the basics. So the form has its purpose, but it's going to teach everyone astrology. It has your sign on it, it has your ruling planet, okay? It also has the house that it pertains to and what the house is and what type of house it is. It also has the body, what part of the season, as well as its element part of the body. So it's some basic points, but key factors. And so far when I introduce different people, they want to play games and stuff like that. And also, there's an astrology coloring book that I put together as well to go with that. And you guys will get some study sheets tomorrow, as well as a short documentation on nationality as well. I'll have a full display. I just got it all kind of in a box right now. Yeah, but this box is going to be actually kind of this tall on the table and this wide. But we're doing it for the babies. Brother Todd, you said in many videos that no matter what we do, even if it isn't good for us, make it good for the babies.
Yes.
So if it's good for the babies and the mothers approve,
Yes.
then that's half the battle. I'm just hoping. So I want everybody to come on out tomorrow. Come and get the Astrology 101 workshop lesson because you will not be disappointed, and I will make sure that when you come tomorrow that you're regurgitating back to me what we're going over and what Brother Todd just covered here in the basics. So 1 to 5 tomorrow. 1 to 5 tomorrow. 602. Yeah, Vandiver. It is paypal.me /Nyla Gilliam. It is also cash.me. Alright, or is it cash.me? Cash.me / it's a $, Reawaken. People here, if you haven't signed on, I know they're usually late reservations. So if you want to do it, exchanging via Federal Reserve notes and move off money, you can do that as well. And I think that's about it. Got a lot of stuff for you guys tomorrow too. I got some tools like notebooks and compass and squares and stuff for everybody that participates. So that's about it. Yeah, I think we got the food covered. I'm really not sure, but yeah, it's definitely the food though. Definitely is going to be here as promised. So any questions? Going once, going twice. I would love to see you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much. Yes. What's your solar return?
2.5 degrees Aries.
Gotcha. You know your ascendant?
Pisces.
Oh. And you know your moon?
28 degrees Leo.
So we got, you said Aries is your ego. And your moon was what?
Leo.
Alrighty. And your ascendant was what?
Pisces.
Alrighty, 2 fires in the water, correct? Alrighty, and we're looking at cardinal fixed mutable. Right there. You see something out here?
Making steam.
You're trying to put yourself out now.
They got a sauna going up.
That's it. That's all I was going to go over since you said you wanted to see the blocks. So, but with that, I yield the floor. Mother Ayla, I'll give you the mic for the last word, though. You don't have anything to say?
Yeah, excuse me. For those of you, because this first issue is gonna be collective item 2.
Yes.
To your left on the stand there, I think we only got about 10 of them left. Dr. Naila's book, Musing Undercover, this is a public test, technicality.